Good evening. Welcome to the February 1st, 2024 meeting of the Planning Commission. I can't believe it's February already. Let's see. Call the meeting to order, and looks like we have all commissioners present. Dennis, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I will, certainly.
Thank you.
Sensitive mics. Put your hand over your right, or over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, do we have any changes to the agenda?
I move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the agenda is approved. Announcements and introductions. And Dennis?
Bob, you got it?
Bob said no.
Okay. I do have one. I just left the new restaurant called Mulholland in Old Town Calabasas. Chamber of Commerce and our city council members were all there to cut the ribbon and dedicate the place. And it's interesting that it's called Mulholland. I met the owners last week, and they thought it was Mulholland because it was near Mulholland Drive and Calabasas Road. Truth is, the Mulhollands have a great deal of connections to this community, and I actually shared some of the things that are, from our very own people, one of which is the books. There are two of them, actually more, that were written by Catherine Mulholland. And when I was on the council, my office holder money bought the first 350 copies for public use in promoting Calabasas, of Calabasas Girls, of the women pioneers of this territory, and Calabasas Lives, which is the men pioneers of this territory. And I say territory, it was not just Rancho El Escorpion, but the entire territory, basically from Agoura Hills to LA. So the fact that Mulholland, the restaurant, is opening, and all of our folks there, the chamber and the council, are helping celebrate that. I wish we could be doing that instead, but at the same time, it's nice to know that the planning that we've done for the past 33 years literally started because we're always determined to make the most out of the history of Old Town Calabasas and of Calabasas altogether. And our own, many times Mayor James Bazagian has written with Kim Castellan this book on Calabasas. I would recommend that anybody go to the library and check it out. If you want to buy one, I'm sure you can get them either by calling City Hall or by going to Amazon, because I think they're there. So it's Calabasas Girls, Calabasas Lives, and the city of Calabasas being celebrated at Mulholland tonight in Old Town. A nice place to visit. And if you're thinking about keeping some of our money in our local community for all the good benefits that buying Calabasas means here, it's a great place to go and spend some time and money and enjoy yourself in Old Town Calabasas. Thanks.
Sounds good, thank you.
It's a commercial, but what the heck.
Hey, it's a good commercial. Michael, you have anything?
No announcements. Thank
John?
you.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Okay. Now we come to oral communications, public comment. This is for people wishing to address the commission on matters that are not on the agenda. I don't see anyone in the audience, so.
That is correct. We don't have any public speakers. I do want to point out that Scott Trujillo is joining us tonight. He's sitting out in the audience, and he is the city's new assistant city manager. And he comes to us from the city of Indio, where he was there for approximately 18 years. So we look
Wow.
forward to
Nice.
working with Scott.
Come to the podium.
You want to come up and come to the podium, and then maybe turn around? There you go. Can we get a shot of him so everybody meet Scott Trujillo? Welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Nice to work with you.
Yeah, I look forward to working with the commission and the staff as well. So thank you.
Terrific.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Consent items. We have 2 sets of minutes tonight. Let's deal with the first one. That's from the meeting held on January 4th of 2023.
Oops,
Do we have,
sorry, that's sensitive.
Should be
I want to
24.
pull that one.
okay.
Yeah, it
We'll
should be.
pull that
should
off
be
of consent
2024.
items, and we'll discuss it in a moment. What about the
Yes,
minutes from the
I-
January 18th? Same thing?
yes.
Okay, so those come off of the consent items. We'll deal with them one at a time now. What about the adoption of Resolution 2024-786? Do we have discussion? Are we going to have discussion? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so they're all pulled off of the consent items, and let's deal with them one at a time. The minutes of the meeting of January 4th, 2023. Michael, you've indicated that you have comments.
Yes. Well, I think John indicated it's just a typo. I think it probably should be 24. But
January 4th of 2024, yes.
yeah, but
Okay.
my concern is on the second page with the highlighted part that we specifically asked to be added.
Mhm.
It's kind of general, and it's not really accurate. It says that the chair made, or individual members of the ARP made, and they didn't make. It was the chair who made comments, and he expressed the concern of all the members of the ARP about the authority and procedural effectiveness of the ARP, and I would just say that. The chair expressed the concern of all the members of the ARP about the authority and procedural effectiveness of the ARP. He didn't say anything about the posture. I'm not even sure what that means.
Okay. There was discussion at the last meeting that these were individual members of the ARP, and no one was authorized to speak on behalf of, to represent the ARP in speaking at the meeting. So I don't know, other than saying individual members of the ARP spoke, any ideas on what else can be said?
Well, the chair said he spoke unanimously for all the members.
Well, let me make a comment on what's on page 2 of the minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, Michael, but that's why the reference to the details of the discussion, because they are important. They are recorded, they're in the Granicus record, and it's referenced in the minutes. If you want further details on what was discussed, whether it was a majority view, a minority view, or an individual view, doesn't make any difference. It's important that the city know about it, and it's in the minutes that if you want the details, you can go to the Granicus record and pull the data off for yourself. So it actually does cover what you're talking about, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the word posture should come out because I'm not sure what that means.
I can explain.
Oh,
May I? Excuse me.
Please.
Okay, so it was about 3 that spoke, and only one was wanting to discuss the procedural effectiveness, like their authority and so forth. The others were just basically giving their sentiments of happy to be a part. So posture is basically his position. And if you look at the tape, it doesn't state for everyone that they were just given a chance to speak on items that was not on the agenda, items that were not. So that's the explanation of posture, authority, and procedural effectiveness. So to get a full understanding of everything that happened, you can look at the recording, but that's generally, those 3 things generally is what encapsulate everything that was said.
I still think posture is a misuse of the word.
Okay?
And I think the chair did get up and say he spoke on behalf of the entire panel. He specifically said that.
He
So,
did.
So unless he's not telling the truth, which I have no reason to doubt, I have no reason to doubt that he's telling the truth. So I think it should actually say something, and this doesn't really say anything. So I would delete the word posture, and, I don't know, do you have some thoughts about this? I would delete the word posture, because that is a, misuse of the word. And I would just say that, you can say it some other way, but the chair expressed the concern of all the members, or expressed concern about the authority and procedural effectiveness of the ARP, something like that. That was the clear message. He went on and on about that. So I don't want to just refer to Granicus. That was the point of adding this all together.
Yes.
May I suggest that
Oh.
what we consider is stating that the chair, which you're pointing out, the chair is the one that made these statements.
Correct.
Rather than saying that the chair representing the entire ARP, we could say something along the lines of the chair who stated that he represents the viewpoint of other ARP members, and then continue on with the rest of the sentence.
Well, he said he represented all. He stated that he was representing the sentiment of all the other members, not just one.
If I could jump in briefly, one key comment on this element. The ARP chair, I understand, spoke with his understanding speaking for the members. However, we've refrained from describing it as such because it was never on an ARP agenda for those comments to be approved as the ARP's position. It was never voted upon, that was never on their agenda. So hence some other phrasing to reflect the reality that he spoke as chair, but it was not with the voted backing of the commission behind him, because the panel, rather, they never had it on any panel agenda, nor would they, because it's not within their purview. So hence the idea is to have a more general comment
No, I
and capture
disagree.
that.
The entire panel was there, and they were not in concurrence, and they certainly could have said we disagree. They did not. They clearly did not. They clearly supported what he said.
And so if we're relying on context, that is captured best through the tape and the video, hence the reference to the Granicus video.
Well, but you need a more precise reason to look at the Granicus video, and this does not provide that. It's a
Why don't
white
why don't we just say, the chair stated that he represented the views of his fellow ARP members in regards to this other stuff, authority and procedural effectiveness. So that just says he represented it. It didn't say he had the authority to. It just says he did. Stated that he represented, and which is what he said.
He represented his concerns
He
about the
he-
authority.
He
And
stated that he represented his and other members' concerns regarding.
Okay,
Would that satisfy
yes,
your concerns?
yes.
Okay. Michael, did you get that? Okay.
I'll move
there a-
approval of the minutes with those corrections.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Sorry, we're getting used to this, so it's
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
different.
And it's more sensitive, so.
Very loud.
Under discussion, yes, since you
Is there,
seconded.
yes,
Michael, I think that our attorney was trying to use a single word to describe the condition we are now describing in more words. And we heard from our attorney, the other attorney, Matt, that the word position is actually more representative of what was occurring in that moment. So I'm not changing the language. I'm just saying that if the word posture were replaced with the word position, singular, or positions, it would work, but let's stick with what is done.
That would be closer to the
But
meaning.
posture wasn't wrong, it's just a little astute. And I think positions would have been a better word.
Okay.
I stumbled on the same thing you did, so
all right. So we have
we have to vote.
we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes of the January 4th meeting with the corrections, with the adjustments that were just discussed, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And although I did watch the full tape, I'll abstain since I wasn't at the meeting and my vote is not needed here. Okay? On to the minutes of the meeting of January 18th, and I believe that, no. All right. You had further
Well,
concerns with the January 18th?
It's with
minutes?
the, actually, it's with, no, it's actually with the item 5.
Resolution
The
202.
resolution, yes.
Okay,
So I
all
don't
right, so
have-
do we have a motion to approve the January 18th minutes?
Well, the date has to be correct again.
There is one typo as well.
20, with the correction to 2024.
Yep, that was the typo,
Okay,
that first line.
all right. Do we have a motion
I'll move it. I'll second.
with the one correction? All
Right.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Dennis Bob.
Opposed? Okay. Approved as amended, 5-0. All right. On to adoption of Resolution 2024-786, approving file number SPR 2019-005, OTP 2021-001, LLA 2021-003, consistent with our direction from the January 18th meeting. And I will note that we did receive a memo from the city attorney's office addressing the concerns about the lot line adjustment. Is there discussion?
Yeah, maybe I can explain what my concerns are about this, because I'm the one who asked for some sort of legal clarification, but I still think it's not clear to me. I'm sorry, this seems awfully loud, so I don't know how to turn it down or whatever, but.
Move it a little further
Oh,
away.
okay. So, my concern was that this was proposed as a lot line adjustment, and Director Klein admitted at our meeting that there is no lot line adjustment in this case. And he also said that there's no track map amendment. And again, my concern really is this. I think the applicant was forced to do a lot of engineering and spend, I don't know, a couple $1,000s to create a new parcel map, and that wasn't, and that is normally required for a lot line adjustment when you're off a few inches or a foot or whatever it is. But it's not required for a lot merger. So I don't know why this wasn't processed under lot merger, section 17.44.140 of the municipal code, because you wouldn't have to ask for that. I mean, I think the city should probably, I mean, unless there's some reason why you felt it necessary to do it under a lot line adjustment, and I haven't heard the justification, you could have done a lot merger, which is exactly what this is, and you wouldn't have to require anything, and just record a certificate of merger and a certificate of lot merger, that's what the code says, and save the applicant a couple $1,000s and not confuse the neighboring legal description, which includes half of that middle lot. So
Well-
that's my concern. That's my concern.
At this point, and
Well, I'm not
Please
concerned with
correct
the
if
project. I'm not concerned with the project at
I think
all.
we should separate
Yeah.
approval of
Right,
the project,
right.
and we can have, do we need to have the discussion before we approve it? Or can we, it would seem more appropriate to deal with approval of the project, and then just hear if there are commission members who have a concern moving forward, to hear those concerns, note them moving forward. I
Well,
mean, we're
could-
not,
could we,
we can't make it, it's
right.
not agendized. We
Right.
can't make any decisions
Right.
about it. You can just make your concerns
Could
known.
we approve it and say, go back and do this as a lot merger and consider refunding the money? Because
mean,
The
this
simplest,
applicant,
if I could jump in briefly, the
Oh.
simplest path forward for the homeowner is to simply approve the resolution as requested, that approves the project, including the lot line adjustment. Any decisions about refunding fees is a council decision only. not this commission. That has no power here on that front.
So I don't
The
think this is
simplest
a
path forward
lot.
is simply approve
Right.
it.
So my problem is this is not a lot line adjustment, and the director said that last time. So, and this is not a lot line adjustment. There is no moving of a lot, there is no mistake in the lot line. This is a merger of two parcels, and it should have been processed the way I look at it, unless you can tell me otherwise, under the section that says lot merger, it's just like just a couple pages after lot line adjustment. It says lot merger, and this is what you do. And it's really simple, it doesn't even come to the planning commission, by the way. The development review committee does it, the director issues a certificate of lot merger, and that's the end of it.
If I may jump in here
So
really
that-
quickly. Section 17.44, that's the section you're referencing. That covers adjustments and mergers. So they're all processed as the same type of permit.
Well, if you look
A
under
lot merger
17,
is the same as the lot line adjustment.
it's not processed the same. If you read 17.44.140, you'll see that all you have to do is do a certificate of lot merger. You do not go to the planning commission.
The only reason why this was
It
at the
says right
planning
in there.
commission is because it was tied to the overall application.
That's fine, but you would.
It was always going to go to the planning commission, in other words.
Okay, I thought that might be the case, but the applicant would not have to do all that engineering, because there is no engineering going on.
It's the
No,
same-
we're
it is
still
the
going to
same
be
engineering
required to
process.
do the engineering. We
No.
will not approve a house.
It says you do.
Hold on,
Oh, okay.
I'm not finished. We would not approve a house that spans two parcels. Never. I realize some exist in the city. That was the county's doing. Now, with modern planning, we will not approve a house that spans two lot lines. Therefore, they were going to be required to merge the two pieces of the lots together and erase the line in the middle.
So
The
why
lot
is
line
that?
adjustment is the vehicle to do that.
My question then is, because I've seen thousands of deeds with properties that have more than one lot or less than one lot.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you require that no other jurisdiction does, that I'm aware of?
Calabasas seeks to be better than other jurisdictions.
But
I think our code explains that for the last 30 years.
No, I
We've
mean,
always sought to be better.
LA doesn't require, Beverly Hills doesn't require. I was looking
Right.
at a deed from Beverly Hills that has more than one lot, and they don't require.
Mm-hmm. And those are other
a
cities with
merger.
other codes, not
I-
the city.
I think, given that the director has the option of not requiring engineering for the merger,
No,
why
that
would-
isn't an option, as has been
it
explained.
is a requirement. If you look at that
I've read the
section.
code, and that's not an option in this situation. They were going to be required to do the engineering as necessary to merge the two parcels together.
It's not written that way in the code.
What is the engineering? What has to be
It's a
done?
couple
Mr.
thousand
Klein?
dollars, a survey.
The surveying
which
for
is
both a lot
nonsense.
line adjustment and a lot merger are the same. They would file the same documentation with our Public Works Department.
It's not required to do a survey for a lot merger. Look at the code. And I think that's unfriendly to our citizens if you insist on doing that. It is, you have the option, but for merging two lots that have existed for, 100 years, that's really unfriendly and unnecessary. They already exist. Why would you require a survey? No, there's no question that the lot lines are accurate. There's no question that somebody's built over a lot line. Then you need a survey. But to do engineering for that, it's like a waste of money.
Well, may I
So the
ask a
issue here
question
is if you look
of the
at
attorney?
1744-140, the lot merger section you're citing to,
Yes.
sub A2, a parcel map is required. That has to be, that's prepared by a surveyor.
No, it
That's the
says,
same
look
cost.
at the whole section, it says it's optional, he can just do a certificate of lot merger. So if the director wants to make expensive.
And even a certificate of lot merger is still prepared by a surveyor. Either way, there's a surveyor involved in the situation.
No, if you
And there was
look at
never
it,
not going to be a surveyor.
I'm sorry, I read it, it does not say that. But if you really want to stick it to our citizens, go ahead. I mean, I'll approve this because he's already spent the money. But I think that's really unfriendly and really unnecessary, and Beverly Hills doesn't do it, LA doesn't do it, no other city that I've ever seen does it. The only time they require engineering in a parcel map like that is if they're doing a new condo project. But to merge two existing lots that have existed forever, and there's no question of where the lot line is, that's make work for the staff and expense for an applicant, and it's really unfriendly.
Why don't we could amend this modestly and say, I don't exactly have the words, but a lot line adjustment, or, if applicable,
A lot
a lot
merger.
merger. And then then, if the applicant wants to protest what has happened to the city council to get fees back or whatever, he can do that.
That makes excellent
So
sense.
this sort of gives it an
Right,
alternative.
and also gives a direct, okay, because a lot merger is what's happening here, not a lot line adjustment.
It's
And-
funny, Michael, you even,
And the
That would be
director
fine.
said
No
that.
concerns with
Are
that approach.
there any,
Yeah.
Okay.
any
that
concerns
would
with
be
that
good.
proposed language? No? All right,
That's why
So-
John's
So,
here.
this clarity,
With
You're
that change in the,
you're okay with the lot merger?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It's a lot merger. It's not a
But
lot
the-
line
but the-
adjustment.
but
Even
the-
our director said it wasn't a
No,
lot
no,
line
it's not
but the
adjustment.
language that is going to go in is alternative language.
That lot is
Right.
not.
Lot line adjustment
That
or
other lot is already
merger
separately
as
split.
deemed.
as
John.
applicable, or.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a ha-
That's
it's the
fine.
tract
All right,
description
so do
is
we
they've
have,
already
do
separately
we have a
split.
motion
I'll
on?
move with that change that Commissioner
We've got the win.
Mueller and Commissioner Harrison have agreed to, that with that change, we should approve this resolution.
I second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Commissioner Mueller, can I just clarify, oh, sorry, that was loud. Was that a change to the project description to mention the lot line adjustment or lot merger, or where was that change that you mentioned?
You know, the words, I think the answer would be wherever it says lot line adjustment,
Okay,
let's add the phrase or lot merger as applicable.
as applicable.
So then it's covered, and there's not hanging out there, somewhere in here, a lot line
Right.
adjustment
I
by
think there was,
itself.
right, I think there was one section, but there may be other
Yeah, I
references.
think there was other ones.
Yeah.
In fact, I even
there may
saw
be
one where
references.
it says a lot line adjustment to merge, to, you know, so
Are-
it picks up the
Does
concept.
that make it clear enough?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right.
It would also fit in the condition of approval that would be about recording that.
In lieu of a-
And I don't see the number in front of me, but that condition approval would be modified. I'd also note on the big picture piece here, certainly the commission could ask the council to put on staff's work plan a larger term look at the code sections to make it simpler for applicants. It's always a good thing to look at, and that could be done as a request from the commission to council as part of the upcoming work plan.
So in this, in that section on merger, number 2, it says, "The director in his or her sole discretion shall have the authority to allow the recording of a certificate of lot merger in a form acceptable to him or her in lieu of a parcel map." So it's not, so it's the planning department that required it, not the code.
And as approved, the condition I was looking for is condition number 69. Modify that language to reflect lot merger or lot line adjustment. That would accomplish the
As
commission's
appli-
adopted
as
action.
applicable, yeah. Okay. And I don't hear I don't hear any kind of request in terms of the city council adding it to their,
No.
so,
All right.
let's move on. Now, new business. We have a presentation, housing laws and regulations, presentation, information, and discussion.
All right. 1 second.
And while we're getting the checkup, I'll give a 30-second introduction. This is a presentation on housing laws, both reflecting some new adjustments made by the legislature effective January 1st and how they fit into existing housing law. I'll note at the outset that this is, in summary, what the law book says. We're not applying the law to any particular application or any particular project. That's not on tonight's agenda. Nor are we, by saying what is in the law book, conceding that any of the laws apply in any particular case, in any particular situation. The city always reserves all discretion available under any applicable law, including its constitutional police powers, to contend that any statute is not applicable to the city and that any statute does not apply in any particular case on its particular facts and circumstances as existent under that code. This is about a summary of the laws as they are in the books, not a discussion of what may apply in any particular case. We
Okay,
reserve
and-
all rights for the future. Thank
All
you.
right, and
With that, my
Shall we-
colleague will carry it away through the chair.
Yeah, I believe it sounds like we should take that to mean that after the presentation or during any question and answer period discussion, that we should not be referencing any specific projects as these laws apply to those projects. So, because it's not before us, it's not on the agenda. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, thank you. Take it away, thank you.
All right. So, 2023 year-end legislative report on housing and land use. Summary of the legislative action. The legislature introduced 2,066 bills and approved 1,046 bills. October 14th, 2023 was the last day for the governor to act on bills passed by legislature, and Governor Newsom signed 890 bills and vetoed 156. Okay. Now, AB 1332, ADU pre-approval program. This adopts a process for pre-approval of ADU plans by January 1st, 2025. That means the city needs to adopt a process. Also, there's a pre-approval of ADU plans. That does not equal the approval of an application. The application for a pre-approved plan is subject to the same application processing timelines and fees as the primary ADU application. Now, unlike other ADU applications, pre-approved plans would not be site-specific. And pre-approved plans and the applicant's contact information, it must be posted to the website. So basically, oh, and let me talk about that last part. If they have to make an affirmative act to move it from the website, if they wanted to do so, the developer or applicant, okay? And so basically, this talks about the ADUs, they don't have, sorry, I'm dealing with two computers, so, excuse me. This is where there's no covenant, no law requiring ADUs to be rented to household affordability thresholds. So the ADUs are affordable by design, as you know, for both the tenant and the homeowner. So, because it's a smaller home, and so that's the cost for that. That's that. This is talking about the architectural plan. That could be expensive, about $10,000. So what this is allowing developers to do, as well as the city has the option to do also. You just adopt, you have a pre-approved design, and then you can use that repetitively, and it saves money, the $10,000, as an example, rather. Any questions about that?
I think it's a great idea. Los Angeles already has that. So-
Okay, yeah,
I do have a question about that.
okay.
It seems to me that this might be understood as an encouragement to manufactured housing and/or standardized housing for ADU development, trying to keep costs under control, because right now, if you're trying to build a 480 square foot single bed, kitchen, bath, shower, 480 square feet, you can pay $2 a square foot, or you can pay $8 a square foot, depending on jurisdiction that you're in. LA City, in fact, has done things like that downtown LA and building apartments where the units literally are 3 and 4 times the cost of doing manufactured housing if it's being done with basically, cement, sticks, mortar, drywall, et cetera. So manufactured housing might be a viable approach to dealing with the opportunity that's indicated in that last, or second to last bar that you're talking about. Now, it's kind of a question.
Okay.
It's also a comment.
Okay.
Am I off target with what I just said?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on the same line. When does it determine whether the plan can fit the site they want to put it on? When does that come into play?
When does that come into play? When the plan can fit?
I'm sorry?
Ask your question again, please.
It says the plans are not site-specific.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the plan doesn't fit a given site? When does that come into play?
So this is basically about the pre-approved plans. So with the permit, if someone is trying to get a permit to build, that's separate. So that's why these plans, it's not for a specific site. Is that making sense?
If I could jump in.
Go ahead.
I hear what you're saying, but no, it doesn't make sense. How can you,
let me-
how can you have
They have to go through a
plan?
regular permit process.
Exactly.
So we looked at that. We looked at this
Go ahead.
as part of our housing element. So it's in our current housing element as a program that the city is supposed to implement. Now, apparently it's, not apparently, now it is also state law. Think of plan as not the property, The plan that they're referring to is specifically the building plan.
Right.
So the pre-approved building plan would basically be a set of floor plans, elevations, roof plan, mechanical, electrical, et cetera, for a specific unit. To answer Commissioner Washburn, this would make it easier for manufactured homes to submit their building plan, their manufactured home plan to the city, and then have that as a pre-approved plan. From there, if a homeowner is interested in using that specific plan, whether it's pre-manufactured or traditional design, traditional construction, they would then take that building plan and have someone prepare a site plan showing where on their property they would locate that particular building. They will have to deal with topography, they will have to deal with foundation and soils, et cetera, but they could use the engineered building plan that's already been created and show where they're gonna put it on their property. We estimate that that would probably save a homeowner roughly between $30,000 and $40,000 in soft costs, because in order to hire an engineer, go through that process, go through the building and safety plan check process, that could cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 in soft costs just to get the construction of that building approved.
And
Excuse me,
maybe-
the city would have no say as to whether, hey, that's not gonna work on this site, correct?
Our say would be limited to the configuration. So under state law, we have to allow for certain setback requirements. We can't require greater setbacks, so the state law has established those setback requirements, so we can make sure that it meets those objective development standards in terms of setback, height limit, et cetera. One reason why we believe it's important to move forward with our own pre-approved ADU plans is that our intent, for example, our neighboring city, Agoura Hills, actually just, if they haven't already released it, they're going to release their own pre-approved ADU plans. What they did is they hired an architectural and zoning firm to do sort of go out and do a windshield survey to look at the architectural context of Agoura Hills and develop 3 or 4 different styles of ADUs that match the various architecture of Agoura Hills. So Agoura will have their own pre-approved plans that they've developed that, based on that process, are more consistent architecturally with that community. That becomes somewhat of a disincentive for others to submit their own pre-approved designs because the city will have already developed their own.
Having gone through this, it's quite expensive to get the architect,
Yes.
the engineer, the person who has to do all the environmental calculations and everything, so that would save a lot of money.
It would save a lot of time and money.
Time, oh yes, it also took a few months to get through that process.
Yeah.
So that would be great, I think.
Dennis?
I'd like to continue on the same line. An example would be, and correct me again if this is outside of our current understanding of what can be done. If you had an ADU that was a garage insert, manufactured, and you deliver it on a flatbed truck in a flat pack, literally, drive the truck up, stick it in a 600 to 800 square foot garage, and worry about the hookups. Most of the garages already have electricity, gas, electric, drainage, security to not have a flooded garage, so forth. So if you just take a box that's 600 square feet and you stick it in a garage, and it's pre-approved throughout the state of California, then you save a lot of money because someone can likely go to town, maybe manufacture them in Mexico, and not even have to pay prevailing wage to install it except for a couple of days worth of hookups and installation. So I'm guessing that this AB 1332, if it were idealized to that cost metric, might be an encouragement to actually have ADUs that can literally be driven up and dropped off just like a storage container. Is that correct or incorrect, staff?
That is, I think, part of the legislature's vision. Also, the other part of the vision is, as Mr. Klein noted, saving applicants, residents, $30,000, $40,000 in engineering costs, even for stick-built ADUs. And that's where there's sort of this benefit for the city, given the reality that ADUs are part of state law, they're here to stay. if the city can incentivize the production of ADUs that match on a menu of 3 or 4 the city's aesthetics, then we might end up with better product than we would otherwise would, because we're saving residents that cost. Hence, that's what Agora's done, and that's what our housing element calls for us to do when we get to it.
Well, it sounds to me like Agora's actually still encouraging, sticks and concrete, probably not carbon-safe concrete on top of it all. All those things that we have to deal with now in terms of environmental and chemical and physical issues that impact the construction of housing. So I'm hoping that our staff and Agora Hills are looking at ways to create some affordable, or at least housing affordability opportunities by using various other techniques. Looks to me like under AB 1332, we could do that in our town.
Yes, it's something we can take a look at as we move that aspect forward. If I could suggest with that, there's a few more laws we should probably move to.
But thank you. It helps me understand a lot of stuff I've been working on.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
let's let Minister continue.
Okay, so that is AB 1332. So, here are the housing laws that we have to address that addresses this crisis. State Density Bonus Law, Housing Accountability Act, and the Housing Crisis Act of 2019 is what we're going to discuss wholeheartedly tonight. But all of these are things that are part of what's being addressed with the laws. Just want to state that. Benefits to the developer for density bonus law. There are more units per acre, the incentives and the concessions, waiver or reduction of development standards, and preferential parking standards. Now, who is eligible for a density bonus? A developer requesting a density bonus for a housing development consisting of 5 or more residential units in a mixed use or residential zone. They also have to agree to record a 45 to 55-year affordability covenant and to construct a threshold number of affordable senior or qualifying housing, or donate land for affordable housing. Now, these are the minimal eligibility thresholds. Have to have at least 5% of the units are for rental or sale with very low income households. With lower income household, it must be at least 10% of the units are for rental or sale. And then this bullet point, at least 10% of the units are for sale for moderate income households. Put a little asterisk by that because we're going to come back to that because it changes when we get to super density thresholds. So next, market rate senior citizens, 55 plus, housing development with at least 35 dwellings, and at least 10% of the units are for transitional foster youth, disability veterans, or homeless persons rented at very low income rates, or at least 20% of the units are for lower income student housing. So I just want to make, these are the thresholds. Okay. Now this is a metric, family of 4. The code has different things for different family numbers. Extremely low, very low, low, that's the medium amount, 98,200, and then the moderate. So you can just look at that. For a family of 4, that is the affordable rent that you see there.
And these numbers are updated every year by the state, and based on numbers is updated by the feds. But those are the numbers for 2023. We don't yet have them for this year.
Yep.
Can I add something? I'm looking at this moderate, $117,850, that's income. In the patch today, Calabasas was indicated as surpassing Beverly Hills with a median household income of $195,000. And if moderate is at 117, what do you actually put a title on 195,000 an annual income? Is anybody talking about that?
I mean, here, all of these, the density bonus law and the other state affordability laws are all tied to county median income and percentages thereof. Certainly, our median income per the patch is 100,000 over county median income. So that is both good news for the city economically, but also creates a challenge in that somebody making even moderate income may be hard to find housing, even at that scale, given how much lower that is relative to the city's median income.
And the last thing is that the language up to this slide is talking about essentially affordability issues and/or affordable housing terminology. I don't see workforce housing in here at all, which allows folks to deal with different interpretations. Workforce housing in Calabasas would probably have to be somewhere in this $117,850 range, or $2,700 in utilities, to live in this town and work at an ice cream store in the Commons. Pardon my, I know we're not supposed to mention developments, but that's.
So yeah, the workforce housing element is another part of the housing puzzle. The density bonus law doesn't focus on workforce housing. It just focuses on moderate, low, and very low. So in that one, we're reporting how the legislature has structured it.
Is any of that in the language that Newsom is using to sign the 700 or so number of bills that are making communities like ours conform to the concepts that are being put out by the legislature?
Much of his rhetoric speaks to workforce housing, but most of the bills as standards are focusing on moderate, very low, and low income.
That's the problem that our staff and this commission and our able council is facing in this community.
I'm sorry.
I'm done.
I just want to make.
Keep going on.
No. I just want to ask this because I have sections for questions throughout the presentation. So any questions before we get to that part, could you just write them down so that we can efficiently get through the presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, density bonus. This is the calculation. The code has these calculations for very low, low, and moderate for density bonus. So, just as an example, if you have a very low income, say you have 10 units, and you're going to allot 1 unit to be for affordable housing, then that's going to be 10%, right? 10% of that 10, that's 10%. So if you look at this chart here, you go to very low, and then you go, the threshold will be 10%. The density bonus will be 32.5%. So you have to round up. So because 32.5 would be 3 units, technically, but when you round up, it makes it 4 units. So with the density bonus, what happens is they get additional 4 units to the 10 units.
It's not percent, it's number? I mean, this column says percentage, it doesn't say.
Well, hold on, let me finish.
Oh, it's in your example, okay.
Yeah, it'll be clearer when I get, because it took me a minute to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
To understand it. No, it's all.
And then I have to tie it into these numbers because it's confusing.
I understand, trust.
It's 10, that's what it is. Yeah, it's the, right,
Yeah.
got it, okay.
Yeah, so 10 units, we want to make one of them affordable housing. That is 10%, so then the density bonus is 32.5%. Okay, let's take another example. If we're going to do low income, let's say we have 100 units, and we're going to make 10 of those accessible for affordable housing, then that is 10% also. So now we go to very low, and I'm sorry, you go to low, 10%, so that density bonus is now 20%. You have 20%, which is 20 additional units in that scenario, right? So 100 units, 20%, you get 20 additional units, so that is 120 total units. Does that make sense?
So you get extra units, but you're limited by the amount of rent you can charge, depending on what it is, right? Whether it's very low or whatever.
Right, so this is if we go back to the other slide.
Now I get it, it's tied together, okay.
Yeah, see so for low, this is the family 4, that's the rent.
Got it, okay.
Okay, so that's that. So now let's look at this. I want you to pay attention to this portion on the slide. The cap is 50%. That's the cap, meaning of density bonus. With very low, if you look down, the cap is 50% because the very low the very low threshold of 80 to 100%, that's really an affordable project, affordable housing project,
Yeah.
basically. So the cap, if you're doing 15%, the cap for each one is 50%. Look at very low, 15% is 50% bonus. If you look at low, 24% is 50% bonus. If you look at moderate, 44% is 50% bonus, right? So those are our max. Those are the max and the cap for it. Again, we're disregarding in this, for this purpose, the very low 80 to 100% and the low 80 to 100%. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right, now let's go here. AB 1287 super density bonus. It's basically an additional bonus, but we call it super density because we're giving you a lot. So applicants are entitled to an additional density bonus if they meet those max we just talked about. If they satisfy the following thresholds: 15% of total units for very low income households, 24% of total units for low income households, 44% of total units for moderate income households. And they provide a certain number of additional very low income units and moderate income units. Note that low income is not right there. So the super density bonus is not applicable for low income units. Got it? All right.
And that's on top of the other bonus, density bonus?
Yep.
Okay.
That's on top. That's why it's the super.
Oh, my.
But we're gonna
Okay.
go through and explain that in a minute. So just going back to this other slide. Remember, 15%, 40, 24%, I'm sorry, 15% very low is 50. Low, 24% is 50% bonus. And then moderate, 44 is 50% bonus. So those numbers, 15, 24, and 44. 15, 24, and 44. All right. Now, super density bonus calculations. Don't get confused and think you need to go back to those other bonus calculations, the regular regular ones. There's a whole nother chart in the code. The state just wants to make you confused. It's okay. So these are the super density bonus calculations. Very low. Again, this is for the additional. We've already handled the regular density bonus. This is for the additional. Very low, 5% is 20% density bonus. Moderate, 5% is 20%. Moderate 11, 35%. I'm just showing you sample thresholds. Okay, now here's the real.
So you could get a 20% and a 20%.
Well, I'm going to get to it.
If you do the extra things.
I'm going to get to it.
Okay.
So, hold on. Now, AB 1287 super density bonus. This is how it looks. In that scenario where I gave everyone for very low units, we have 10 units. That gave you a density bonus. It was very low at 15%. That's the 5% threshold. Now, if you're going to do additional of very low at 5%, let me go back because I think I misspoke. Very low at 15%. That's what we've already handled. Now we're going to do additional of very low at 5%. That equals, the total threshold is 20% with that, because you have 15 plus 5. So look over at the density bonus. The density bonus for the initial one was 50%. Now the additional is 20%, which equals 70. Now you have 7 additional units. Does that make sense?
The 20% is the super?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And let's look at another example there. Let's go to,
You get a big bonus for not much.
let me ask a question of you, just to be interactive. Go to you, Mr. Harrison. Why is it that we only have very low and moderate on this slide?
On the
Very
super
low
density?
and on the super density. Why is that?
I can't understand. They don't have low, or, I don't know why
They
they
have
don't.
low.
No, they don't have.
No, so,
No.
so look at it,
It's just very
looking
low
at
and
this.
moderate. It's strange.
Yeah, so,
odd.
No, if you're additional.
If you're super.
If your additional units to get you to the
super density, none of them are low. They're either super low or moderate.
And that,
Very low or moderate.
Very low or moderate, yeah. There's
back
no
to this
low.
slide, will you put it back on the screen?
But there must be
I
a
see.
policy reason why.
Well, it's back, I just wanted to reiterate this slide that we just passed, because I knew I may forget it. With super density, the additional ones can only be very low income or moderate income. That's why that's,
There must be a policy reason for that, and I don't know what it is, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so, any questions about this part? Oh, very good,
If I could jump in real quick on that one.
of course.
Our sense of the policy basis behind this at legislature level is to really focus on the missing middle, which is the moderate income component, and looking at incentivizing as much as they can more moderate income units. Although as noted, it also has the same additional bonuses for more very low units as well, which of course the legislature also wants to emphasize. And we've seen at least one project in another city use this new allowance. There they did 15% very low income and 15% moderate income to get a 100% density bonus, which created a 28 units, it became 59, and it worked.
One thing I want to note on these charts, I just want to make sure that the commission is clear. The threshold amount, so where it says the 15% very low plus 5%, that's based off the base density bonus, or the base density of the site, not the entire number of units in the project. So just as a very quick example, if you have a 5-acre site and that property allows 20 units per acre, the base density would allow for 100 units on that property. The 15% means that they only have to provide 15 units at that affordable rate to qualify for that density bonus. So they may have 120 units on the property, but only 15 of them have to be affordable.
Correct. And if they do that, only 15 have to be affordable. If they do that, then they allow with this additional bonus to have additional units.
Can we require a longer period of time than 40 or 50? I forget what the number of years is. There were two number of years, because that goes sooner than you think.
I mean, that's true.
That's happened in Calabasas where several affordable units are no longer affordable. So I was just wondering.
Unfortunately, the legislature has tied our hands on that one, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
max 55 years. Certain bonuses can be 45 years, typically if it's a community land trust or a nonprofit housing trust. But if it's a straight private developer, it's 55 years, which is better than it used to be. It used to be only 30 years, so we got
Which is what
improved.
those
Which is
previous
why we
projects
have-
were, which is
right.
why they expired.
Right,
And that's
and
why
that's-
55 is much better.
Okay, that is better.
In some communities have acquired a longer than 55-year period of restriction by putting city money into the deal or city land or otherwise incentivizing a deal. So it is possible to get a longer period if in return for something on the city side.
Okay.
May I just ask Michael a question on your example, that base amount? Are you saying that with the density bonuses, you still can't go over the base amount for that 5-acre property?
No, you can go over the density for that 5-acre property based off of that bonus. The 15% threshold that you need to qualify for that bonus does not apply to the total number of units in the project. So that's why I was using round numbers.
Yes.
100 units or 100 units on that site, if that's the base density for that property, if they provide, 15% at low income or very low income, that would qualify them for, 50%?
Yes.
So then they can actually build 150 units on that property, but only 15 of those have to be very low income.
I see.
Yeah. So it doesn't apply to the total number, just the.
Right, it's not 15% of 150, it's 15% of 100.
Right.
And
The
so to
first-
keep the example going, if you have a 100-unit base density, so 5-acre site, 20 units an acre, 15% very low, 15 units, and 15% moderate, 15 units, 30 total affordable, you can have a 200-unit complex on the site. That's this new super density bonus.
Right, and for all density bonuses, you can see that what you're really giving the developer as the incentive is a greater number of market rate units to offset the subsidized lower income units.
All incentives and concessions. It's a reduction in site development standards or modification of zoning code or architectural design requirements that result in identifiable and actual cost reductions. Actual cost reductions, key in on that. Approval of mixed-use zoning in conjunction with housing projects if the inclusion of commercial, office, or industrial uses will reduce the cost of the housing project, and such non-residential uses are compatible with the housing area and existing and planned development in the area. And other regulatory incentives or concessions proposed by the local agency or the developer that results in identifiable and actual cost reductions, there it goes again, to provide for affordable housing cost or rent. One second. Okay. This are those incentives and concessions, AB 1287, and what is in red is the change in the law. So, very low income, 16%, you're allowed to have 4 concessions and incentives. Moderate income, 45% affordable units in the project, 4 concessions, incentives. The other change, 20% affordable to low-income students, 1 concession, and fully affordable projects with 80% lower income household minimums, 5 concessions. Okay. Next, waivers. Eligibility for waivers. Now, let's read it first. If compliance with a development standard would physically preclude construction of a housing development utilizing the density bonus and concessions or incentives, the applicant may submit a proposal for a waiver or reduction of the development standard. So this is beneficial. This is a benefit of this, but I want to point out this. Eligibility for waivers physically preclude construction. Incentives and concessions, our keyword was actual cost reductions. Make sense? That means yes. Okay? There's no maximum limit on the number of waivers an applicant may request. If you notice, our chart there had the limits, the numbers there with the concessions and incentives. Here, there's no limit.
So
Okay.
it says may submit an application. Does that mean the city has to approve it?
No.
So if they want to avoid fire standards or something, I mean,
Go ahead.
We can deny a request for a waiver if we can show that it's inconsistent with state law, that it violates an objective written public health or safety standard, or that it would impede a landmarked historic property. So it's possible to deny, and the same standard applies for an incentive or a concession. It can be denied if you can show that public adverse impact on public health or safety.
so if it's just an eyesore, you can't deny it.
Correct. Aesthetics
Okay.
won't cut it.
Got it, okay.
Okay. Development standards. Density, I'll explain the asterisk in 1 second. Height limitation, parking ratio, setback requirements, floor area ratio, lot coverage, open space requirement, minimum lot size. So the asterisk is, with the density is, you cannot waive that. That would effectively be rewriting the law. But you cannot say, this is a development standard that I want to get rid of, so give me more density, give me more of a density bonus. So that's, you cannot waive that. All right, we are now on to the Housing Accountability Act. Definition, housing development project. In the Housing Accountability Act, the definition of the housing development project, residential units only, mixed-use development, which is at least 2/3 of the square footage designated for residential use, and transitional housing or supportive housing. Those 3 things, that's very, very important. Those 3 things, residential units only, which is plural, units, right? Mixed-use development, 2/3 of the square footage is residential, and then transitional housing, supportive housing. So, scenario, if if you have a single-family home that, well, would a single-family home apply here?
Sure.
It's residential.
But it's one unit.
Oh, okay.
This says units.
Oh, it says housing development project, okay.
So would a single-family development apply here? No.
What if it's a home and an ADU?
Well, if it's a home with an ADU, no.
No?
I'm going to get to it.
Okay.
Because if it's there, it's one unit. This is all about protection for building increasing housing. So if it's already there, okay, great. But here's the thing.
No, but it's a home and, a new home and a new ADU.
So if you're building it from scratch, you start over.
Right,
Then you're building 2 units.
right,
So now you could do it,
right. And I think that's gonna happen.
As opposed to adding an ADU.
Right,
as opposed to adding.
right.
Did you get that?
Right, but I think that might happen now. People might, while they're building a house, build an ADU.
And they will be protected because now they have 2 units.
Okay. What about a JADU and a house?
So if you're building it from scratch, and you're
Yes.
building 2, great. But if
Okay,
it's a single family one, no. If it's an
Okay.
ADU one, no.
okay.
Okay? Now, let's look at the Accountability Act's decision matrix. Is it a housing development project? Yes, it is. Does it meet the affordable thresholds? We go over here. If it does not, it's not subject to the act. Okay, so now, affordability thresholds. If 100% of affordable to moderate income households, that's what the project is, it's 100%. Then you get this standard, see the little line, the standard for affordable units, that applies. If it's 20% or more units, affordable to lower income households, standard affordable. Now, if it's market rate, this project's market rate, it does not meet the affordable thresholds, then you go to the default standard. And this is all protections for building, okay? Here's the default standard. Project is consistent with objective. I put objectives in color so you can pay attention to that because we're gonna go to that in a minute. General plan, zoning, subdivision, and design standards and criteria. The city cannot disapprove the project or impose conditions that reduce its density unless it does both of these things, both findings. There has to be a specific adverse impact upon public health or safety, and there is no feasible method to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid the adverse impact. Now, these 2 are very hard to do. They're very hard to do. I've heard of one instance where that happened. There was a project where developer, the city required that there be a sewer line. And he wanted to do a septic tank, but it didn't work for the plan. So they were able to deny, because they needed a sewer line, they were able to deny it, the sewer lateral line. Because it was an impact upon public safety, sewer,
Health.
how you handle your sewer is important. And then there wasn't a way to mitigate it because they didn't allow the septic tank that he wanted. So but that's like one instance so this is a very high bar. Okay?
We don't have objective standards, really, do we? Or
We don't have objective standards?
Or-
Go ahead.
in
Mark
ours-
that one.
We certainly have, much of our code is objective. Elements of our code, at least one judge in one case found not objective, but we haven't conceded that to the rest of the code and the rest of the
Oh.
cases.
Okay, can we firm that up, or?
That's absolutely on the work plan, is
Oh,
to.
okay,
I can
Just-
elaborate on that one too.
Yeah.
So in our housing element, again, we have a program in there to develop objective design standards objective design and development standards for larger projects, mixed use, multifamily projects. The idea there is that you kind of operate sort of like a specific plan where the city agrees to a very finite set of standards. And, one example, if you want to somehow regulate architecture, it cannot be subjective in the sense that you can't just say it needs to be Mediterranean. You have to craft very specific requirements that would achieve that goal. So you could specify that you have to have a Spanish tile roof and it must have a pitch at a certain amount. Those are objective requirements. There's no subjectivity to it. But you can't just simply say this area has to have Mediterranean, that area has to have modern. It has to be very specific. Again, some other cities have developed objective development and design standards, and the list of requirements can be anywhere from a dozen to 150.
And the idea is the height of success with cities that have achieved that is you make everything a math problem. You remove any sort of I know it when I see it, or aesthetic judgment, or subjective judgment, or even the claim thereof. If you make everything a math problem, then it's objective. The challenge, of course, is that that means you have to, it reduces some of our aesthetic control, but you can get there somewhat close to most of it with very, very precision in the standards that then dictates those rules.
Well, I look forward to that, because you can identify the design elements, and we can
And
say-
you have to make them extremely precise, so.
And you can,
Well,
you can.
And the other caveat to the whole objective design standards as it's applied to the various state laws is that it is a ministerial process. It's not subjected to any subjective review or public review process. So, for example, in some of the other communities, again, I can point to Agora Hills because they have one. It's all verified at a staff level. So if the property owner / developer shows that they've met all objective standards, then the project moves forward to a building permit issuance. It does not go through commission or
But
council or public
I
hearing
think that's far better. It would save time when we, every time we have to say this is compatible with the homes in the neighborhood, that's pretty hard. I've kept saying, why don't we identify the elements? But if it's all itemized and you just go through a checklist.
Well, in
Well,
their case, it's not single-family homes. So
Okay, but even if it's multifamily homes.
multifamily, it would include, and it includes mixed use. The other component too, again, is you could have a few requirements or you can have a lot of requirements. Agora went through a very robust process to develop a lot of requirements, and so it allows for them to have a more fine-tuned system to ensure, compatibility of the area.
Can we just copy theirs?
I don't know if we would want to. We could take a look at it, of course.
Oh, okay.
The other caveat there, again, is that if the developer chooses not to meet those requirements, they can go through the traditional discretionary review process. So it can go through the conditional use permit, site plan review, full CEQA process, come to the planning commission, and then there, in that case, the commission has actually a little bit more flexibility because they would have had the choice to go through the objective development standards and gone through that process ministerially.
And the other big picture challenge that we'll face as we move forward to develop objective design standards is the policy questions about what standards do we want where. A certain amount of standards will be applicable citywide. The second, your first page, so to speak, pages 2 through 6 are probably going to vary because Greater Moldwood is quite different than Deer Springs, quite different than the Oaks, quite different than the Calabasas Park. So we're going to end up developing standards that match in different areas, and
That's okay.
that will be, I think will be helpful, but certainly won't be
I think that's great. Have a certain set that are standard and then certain ones for each area. For example, we have that Monterey Colonial on Las Virgenes. So yeah, you would add those features.
right. And then we'll
there,
have to figure out
and
how to
then-
define Monterey Colonial in a way that even an English major judge can very simply understand,
And
check
then-
the box.
An English major judge, well, there are photos there. You would have to just look at the photos or get an architect to help.
Well,
with the
see, look at the
elements.
photos. If you're looking at it, then you're analyzing it
Right.
analyzing it subjectively. That's the challenge we're going to face.
Right.
We're not the first city to take this on, so we'll look at best practices as we go around.
Great, that's great, because we have all these overlay zones with certain styles, like the Highland, so
But,
that would be great.
As an example, you
Topanga.
could say that to meet the Monterey objective, you have to have at least 40% of the windows in an arch shape versus just square, or you have to make sure that 80% of each elevation is stucco as opposed to just doing all glass. So there
Right.
are,
Actually, though, with Monterey, it's not, they don't have arched windows.
I'm-
and
I-
they-
it's
and they
just an
have
example.
wood, not,
Give me-
not the stuff, but I get it, That's
Okay.
perfect, that would be
So,
great. if we
I'm
could
gonna
do
get to an objective definition. I think it'll specify,
that's great.
clarify also. Okay, let's see. CEQA still applies. Neither shall anything in this section be construed to relieve the local agency from making one or more of the findings required pursuant to section 21081 of the Public Resources Code or otherwise complying with the California Environmental Quality Act. Division 13, commencing with section 21000 of the Public Resource Code, 21,000. Okay. The changes are in red. Now this slide AB 1633, this is what is considered disapproving a housing development project. Now, what's important here is because under this act, we like to call it the hammer. If you disapprove and you receive litigation, then there are a lot of consequences. So if you vote to disapprove an application, including any required land use approvals, entitlements necessary for the issuance of a building project, that's disapproval voting. If you fail to comply with specific time periods for approving or disapproving the development project, disapproval. Fail to meet timelines in issuance of post-entitlement permits, disapproval. Now these are the two new ones. You fail to make a determination of whether the project is exempt from CEQA and commits an abuse of discretion under certain conditions. So basically, if it's single-family home that's exempt from CEQA, if you make them go through the expense of that process and you know you should have said it was exempt, then that is a failure. That's considered disapproval because you didn't vote to do it, but that expense, you basically killed the project in that manner. Next, fail to adopt a negative declaration or addendum for the project to certify an EIR or approve another comparable environmental document under certain conditions. So these are, the red are the new things. These are the things that actually disapprove. Okay? Now this is what you all have been waiting for, the objective defined. This means involving no personal or subjective judgment by a public official and being uniformly verifiable by reference to an internal and uniform benchmark or criterion available and knowable by both the development applicant or proponent and the public official. So basically, it's not two, three things. It's three things to just make this simpler. No personal subjective judgment by the public official. That's one. It has to be uniformly verifiable by reference to an external uniform benchmark. It needs to be public. It needs to be set like numbers. It needs to be, if it's in the code, it's public. It works. And then it has to be knowable to both the applicant and the official. Those are the three breakdowns of the objective definition. So numeric standards are objective. The code said it needs to be 10 feet, just random. That is objective. What's not objective, and this actually comes from a case, California Renters Legal Advocacy and Education Funds versus City of San Mateo. If there's a height variance of more than one story between buildings, a transition or a step in height is necessary. Well, you can't really define the transition or the step, so that they ruled that that's not objective. So this is demonstrating that they make it narrow. It's very, very precise.
So you'd have to do that by feet or something?
So as an example, in the Carla
instead of-
case, and I wrote the amicus brief in that case for the League of Cities. Obviously, we didn't win, but we fought the good fight. The standard there is, the code was meant to be, if you have a 3-story building, you can't put a 5-story building next to it. Or if you have a 1-story building, you can't put 3 stories next to it. You gotta go 1, 2, 3, or 5, 4, 3. That's what everybody understood. Everybody knows that. However, the Court of Appeal found, well, transition or step in height could mean a foot or a story or 2 stories. It wasn't defined, and therefore they threw it out. So the clear objective, the clear intent didn't matter. The court said it's not numerically objective, so it doesn't exist. And so that's the watchword for us as we look to rewrite these rules. You've got to really make it so that it's just, there can never be a fight.
It's like idiot-proof. So
Idiot-proof, exactly.
They're not planners or architects, so they want feet.
Right,
or-
so for
or
that one, it
inches
would
or
be,
something.
if height varies by more than 1 story between buildings, at least 1 story must, at least 1 story in height must be set. Or better stated from the beginning, no building can be more than 1 story taller than the building next door. Each story is defined as between 8 and 10 feet,
Right, okay.
something like that.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you make it as mathematical as you can. That's what we have to do to survive these standards.
It sounds like there's a lot of work to do.
There is, it's not an easy task.
Oh, okay.
So now, this is the standard of review for the projects with affordable units. I'm gonna go back to this slide here, because we just discussed the default. You see here at the bottom, we did the default, which is dealing with market rate, or if it doesn't meet the affordability thresholds. Because we're encouraging, we want more housing because of the crisis, this is the standard now, the special protections for these affordable projects. Now, the city cannot disapprove unless one of the following findings are made. Compliant housing element, and it meets the RENA allocation for all income categories proposed for the project, and that's the regional housing needs allocation. Project has a specific adverse impact upon the public health or safety, and there is no feasible method to mitigate or avoid impact. The denial is required to comply with specific state or federal laws, and there is no feasible method to comply. On land zone for agriculture, or there's an inadequate water or sewer to serve the project, and the project is inconsistent with both zoning and general plan use designation. So, let's look at number 5. If the plan is inconsistent with the zoning and the general plan, the example I want to discuss is if say there's a church, and the church, they want to make it into residential units, but it's not zoned for that. So what will happen here is they would have to fix it, because you can't have it inconsistent. They would have to fix that difference. The zoning, yeah, you have to fix that. And I'm gonna use that example later also, but you have to fix it, and they would go with the general plan. Yeah, with that zoning, if it's inconsistent, they would go with the general plan. So, remember that example, because I'm coming back to it.
Can we zone open space agricultural?
Zone open space agricultural, on land zone for agriculture, or if there's, these are ways that they can disapprove it.
Right, that's what I mean. So if we don't want big projects in open space, apparently that doesn't count anymore, can we zone it?
Generally, the ag
agricultural?
land protections are gonna be Williamson Act protected land, but we'll double check that.
Okay,
The Williamson Act is like the Mills Act, except for ag land,
okay.
but we'll double check that.
Well, I think maybe to answer your question, though, if a property is zoned for open space, and then someone proposes multifamily on it, it would be inconsistent with both zoning and the general plan designation.
But I don't want to talk about a particular project, but,
Yeah, I'll answer that. So on the project, as noted in our press release with the settlement there, we are planning to bring forward to the voters adjustment to strengthen measures D and S and make them objective, because there the court said it didn't apply because they didn't apply to rezone. They simply applied to build next to it, not on it. And I know we all argue, obviously, they will grade it, but the court said by its own terms, it only applied to a request to modify the zoning, to modify the general plan land use designation. So we'll rewrite it through the voters, and we haven't yet drafted it, so I'm not gonna do so
all right.
now. But the
Okay.
plan is to bring forward a measure to the voters to strengthen that and make it an objective standard.
okay, thank you.
We'll move on from this. Types of discretionary approvals. The standard of review applies to all discretional land use entitlements of a housing development project. Subdivision map approvals, parcel maps and tentative tract maps, conditional use permits, design review permits, site plan review, and other discretionary permits. Determination of compliance. So, if certain requirements are met, The city is required to determine whether the housing development project is inconsistent with the objective development standards within 30 days of the application being determined complete, if it's 150 units or less, 60 days of an application being determined complete if it's more than 150 units. Go ahead.
Who makes the determination that the application is complete?
So, okay, so basically the staff, like, if they're going through the process with the applicant, so the staff will make that determination.
They can be as slow as the city wants them to.
Well, that, it discourages that. Go ahead, Michael.
We have to follow Permit Streamlining
Yeah, I
Act,
was gonna
so
say.
there are specific timelines that staff has to meet while it reviews an application, and the basic requirement is we have 30 days to review an application when it's submitted to determine if it's either complete or incomplete. If we determine that that application is incomplete, then we issue a notice of incompleteness to that applicant. They may take another 6 months to resubmit to respond to that notice. When they resubmit, we then have 30 days to review that resubmittal, make that same determination.
Okay, so there's a domino there that could come into play.
Yes.
Gotcha.
When it's complete, that's when the 30 days start.
I'm sorry?
That starts the clock. So when it's considered complete, that's when the 30 days start. Okay? For 150 units or less. Now, expanded legal units. Who can initiate litigation? The applicant, any person who would be eligible to apply for residency in the project, or a housing organization. Now, if liable, the court may order the city to approve the project within 60 days and grant attorney fees and costs. Now, only if the city does not comply with the court order, these fines are applicable. So if action is not taken within the 60 days, the court may issue a minimum of $10,000 fine per housing unit. And if the inaction was in bad faith, the minimum fine award may be multiplied by 5. And HTD can also refer the matter to the Attorney General.
What's the maximum fine?
Have to look at the code.
The maximum fine is 50,000 a unit times the number of units. And I should note, the fine is not paid to the state. The fine's paid to a housing trust fund controlled by the city that must be spent on housing funds. And then if the city doesn't do so appropriately, then the state can claw it back. But it's a high standard, and hence compliance with court orders is regulated.
Okay. AB 1485, this is that intervention by the Attorney General. In any suit brought in force either this article or any state law listed under subdivision J of section 65585, the department and the Office of the Attorney General shall each have the unconditional right to intervene under the citation there, and the Office of the Attorney General shall have the unconditional right, whether intervening in an individual independent capacity or pursuant to notice or referral from the department. Now we are on to the Housing Crisis Act. Housing Crisis Act, SB 330. Only applies to affected cities, which Calabasas is one. Cities which the HCD determines are located within an urbanized area and urban cluster. Substantive amendments to restrict local development standards and demolition of residences. And procedural amendments to housing development project application. Now, I consider the Housing Crisis Act as having 5 big rules. Just 5 big rules with this act. Number 1, 5 hearing rule. It's my understanding Calabasas is used to about 8. So that is not the case with this act. If a housing development project plus has a complete application plus complies with the objective standards, then the city is limited to 5 hearings in connection with the approval of that housing development project. And these 5 hearings, it includes a public hearing, workshops, appeals, continuances, and is conducted by the City Council, Planning Commission. So this is basically city action. City. excludes legislative approvals, applicant-led meetings, hearings before an application is determined complete, and hearings held by other legislative bodies. So, question here.
Well, so if there's a hearing before the tree board, that doesn't count, right?
Before the tree board,
Yeah.
who called that? That's a question. Who called that meeting?
Well, there is no tree board anymore, but
It's merged with the.
planning commission.
No, the environmental commission.
Oh, is that who is?
Yeah. So let's say so you could have a hearing before the tree board and that wouldn't count? If you want to
Yeah, our
review the
position is that the tree
landscaping?
board is not gonna count because the tree board hearing isn't gonna consider the merits of the project. It's just looking at the tree piece.
It would look at the landscaping.
Right, so our position is that that wouldn't count against the 5 hearing limit.
So why don't we do that for big projects if there's a landscaping issue?
There, A, the tree board was dissolved and merged into the environmental commission, and B, we don't have council direction to have the
Got it.
environmental commission look at
It
it.
wasn't actually dissolved, it actually, if you read it, it has the same functions, but it's just merged with the.
So it's still merged together. So
Correct.
most importantly, we don't have council direction to loop projects
Right.
through there.
And we've chosen to do applicant-led meetings, which some folks have tried to count as the 5 meetings that are not being considered.
Yeah.
It used to be 7 meetings, or 8, whatever it was.
Yeah, and there, our contention is that applicant-led meetings aren't city-led meetings and thus don't count.
Hmm.
So too, anything before the application is deemed complete.
But we can't go to those meetings.
Correct.
Right. No.
So, example, if we were doing,
Sounds like communist
if we were
chair.
changing the zoning, is that church example, where we had to change the zoning, would that be a part of the 5 hearings?
No, that sounds legislative.
Exactly. Very good. Okay, so that's the 5 hearing. That's rule number 1. I was a teacher.
Thank you. Give me a star.
Yeah, you do. You get a big star.
Star.
Okay. No net loss intensity. Now here are the 2 laws. The existing law and the new law. Really, it's the old law, but this is the new law here. So the city cannot reduce general plan or zoning densities of residential parcels unless the city identifies other sites where it can proportionally increase densities. This only protects the RHNA, Regional House Needs Allocation. The new law, the city cannot reduce the building intensity of residential parcels below that in effect of January 1st, 2018, unless the city identifies other sites where it can proportionally increase intensity. This means the entire residential capacity, you cannot make it smaller. So it protects the entire residential capacity. Is that clear? Okay. That's rule number 2. Now, rule number 3. HCD approved moratoria. Existing law, new law. Existing law, city can adopt urgency measures to protect public safety, health, and welfare by blocking approval entitlements. So they can say, hey, no more. Only they can put restrictions. New law, the city cannot adopt a development policy standard or condition that would impose a moratorium on housing development unless it's approved by the HCD. And you have to make specific findings and the state have to approve it. So the whole point is to protect. We want to increase housing, so.
Yeah, but it also sounds like, I mean, I visited the Soviet Union in 1973 for a couple of months, and that's what this sounds like, central planning. You know, where there's no local planning, and there's just a fiat, and you have to do this in the next 5 years. Is there a way to stop this?
It's the law.
No?
It's the law.
Talk to your legislator, organize in Sacramento.
I
That's
mean,
how
I
we stop
understand
this.
some of it, but things like this, it's just like the state making a plan for everybody.
Yeah. No, it's state control and state overriding local zoning control. So
And
what
it's a
we can
little
do is organize in
schizophrenic.
Sacramento.
It's a little schizophrenic when we're in a very high fire severity zone, you know, I mean, it's inconsistent, let's put it that way.
Well, and it's
You're not wrong on that ground.
It's not only controlling what the local municipalities can do, but taking away the ability to consider public safety, health, and welfare. To me, that's mind-boggling.
But that's what I mean by
That
like the
you-
fires.
They've taken.
Well, it's
yeah.
putting it in the
Well,
hands of
they're
the
not
insurance
taking it-
companies, because the insurance companies aren't going to insure anybody
Right.
that is resisting the juggernaut.
I mean, I suppose you can still go to the HCD and argue the public safety issue.
Good luck with that.
Well,
Yeah. But I mean,
How long is that gonna take, and again, good luck with it.
did they,
But
did,
I-
I'm
just
sure there's a bias
mind-boggling
against
to
our
me.
name.
is this on
So-
this HCD approved moratoria?
Mhm.
Do you think that cities had abused this power?
Yes. And
That was the reason, the policy reason for this?
I have a specific example. I won't call the city out.
Oh, come on, tell us.
Oh, no.
But I don't think we
With
did.
that.
No.
So there was a city that imposed a water moratorium. They said we have water issues, so there'd be no housing, no additional housing until this is fixed.
That's
So-
Cambria, California.
But they really don't have any water.
He
But-
said it, not you.
Well, no, actually, it was a different city, so.
Cambria
that I was
doesn't have any
discussing.
water. They're not connected to the state water project.
Right,
So they,
yeah, the one Ms. Gavin is citing is a different city.
Yeah.
that does
Not-
have water?
It-
Or have access to
The
water?
city's findings were that they did not have water. The state disagreed.
Oh,
Are they connected to the state water project in any way? Or MWD?
Yes, I believe they have a Met connection, which
so
is what the
then-
state used to argue that their finding
Got it.
was.
Okay.
Although in the end there, the politics changed anyway, and it became the politics shifted from pro-local control to pro-housing, so. That's the other, we're all existing in a political base in the end. So there, the council in the end withdrew that moratorium because they had shifted their own mindset. That's also
Although
happens in the
inquiring minds want to know, let's move on
Okay.
from
Yeah.
trying to figure out what city it is.
Yeah, but no housing was built because of that at all. So this legislature, they want to stop that action. Okay, objective design review standards. Existing law versus the new law. City cannot disapprove an affordable housing project due to design review standards unless it makes written findings. This kind of goes to that subjective thing. Subjective design standards. The new law is the city cannot impose or enforce design standards established after January 2020 that are not objective.
okay.
So we gotta develop them.
Restrictions on development standards. I call this caps. These are basically caps. You cannot adopt any provision that limits the number of entitlements, caps the number of housing units, or limits the population. Cannot do that.
This is like
Okay.
No net loss of housing units. Now, this comes into play when we're dealing with demolition. So the city cannot approve demolition of residential dwelling units unless the project creates at least as many residential dwelling units as demolished. What's happening is there will be a project, it exists with 10 units. They demolish it, and they want to make it luxury, so now there's only 5 units. And what's happening, the legislature's saying, no, we can't have that. We have a housing crisis, we need to have more. I'm gonna get you 1 second, let me finish the slide. So, more stringent requirements for the protected units. There are even more for these. These units that are subject to affordable covenants, ordinances, or laws are subject to local rent or price controls, were occupied by very low-income households in the past 5 years, withdrawn from rental market under the Ellis Act in the past 10 years. What was your question?
moved too quickly. I wanted to go back to the one before, restrictions, where it says limits the population.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that the city cannot impose number of people per unit?
Well, it's the city itself. So you can't say the city, you will only have 5,000 people.
No, in a given unit.
No, no.
The building code imposes limitations.
I'm sorry?
The building code does impose a limit no more than, 2 people per bedroom plus 2 per unit. And I might have the math on that wrong, but the fire code, building code does set a max number of people per unit. And we are still allowed to impose that, but it's at the state fire code
So
standard.
that's okay, that's still in effect?
Correct. That
Okay.
continues to be in place. This is about citywide growth management ordinances. Those are suspended for now.
That doesn't count all the people living in Costco sheds right now, or Home Depot sheds, right?
Right.
Tents.
Okay. All right, so now, we talked about this already. The demolition, go here. Now, tenant protections. I want to make a notation and clarification, rather, of the first section. It says no evictions within 6 months before start of construction, clarifying no evictions until 6 months before start of
Okay, that makes
construction.
more sense.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that needed to have gone on the final one. So basically, we're wanting to protect tenants. So people are they'll kick everyone out, and then wouldn't start construction until maybe 2 years later, and then
I
those
see.
people are displaced.
This is
So,
also schizophrenic because it's inconsistent with the building of housing, because it's gonna take longer than 6 months to evict people. So it's gonna slow down the construction. I mean, it's just schizophrenic. I don't know what else to say.
they're protecting the people.
Yeah,
I hear you.
I don't know.
So no evictions in that time frame, and the developer must provide these two: relocation benefits to those people who were evicted, and then after they do the development and they're finished, they have to give those people the right of first refusal. So those are the tenant protections. And now we are on to the streamlined ministerial approval process, and this is Matt's section of the presentation.
Yeah, so I'm going to do quick hits on a couple of laws, not detail. And this is sort of the grab bag of protect this kind of project, protect that kind of project, protect that other kind of project. So, next slide, 39? Yeah, there we go. So ADU law we've talked about. As we know, ADUs are one extra unit or two extra units if you do a JADU, a junior ADU, and an ADU. Those are protected, but we can still impose certain setbacks, height, certain standards can be imposed. AB 803 is new this year. This allows small lot developments that are 10 units or fewer on a 5-acre or smaller site with a max unit size of 1,750 square feet. So these are meant to be smaller units on smaller sites. It has to meet urban infill standards, and if so, it is ministerially protected. AB 2011 and SB 6 are a pair of laws that date back, they took effect January 1st, 23, and they allow housing in existing commercial zones or in existing retail and office space conversions or retail and office space zone sites. They have a little bit of difference to them. AB 2011, it has an affordability requirement, at least 15%, with a variable metric for low, very low, moderate income, must include prevailing wages, and is otherwise streamlined. SB 6 doesn't have an affordability requirement, but it has more stringent union protections. It has to be prevailing wages and a skilled and trained workforce, but no affordability requirements. What happened here was the legislature was trying to promote missing middle housing and promote conversions of existing office spaces and retail spaces, the failing malls, so to speak, into housing. And there were two different streams to do it, and in the end, they just approved both. Rather than trying to unify them into one scheme, they just adopted both. SB 9, we're familiar with from adopted 21, took effect 22. We do have an SB 9 ordinance. SB 9 allows two situations, urban lot splits. So you have a single family residential lot, you can split it into two. And then you can build a unit in an ADU, and a unit in a JADU, or one or the other. So one becomes four. That our ordinance that regulates that is Calabasas Municipal Code, Chapter 17.82.82, and there are requirements for size, setbacks, height, et cetera, set to be the maximum that the state will let us impose. The second piece of SB 9 is 2 units. So you have an existing single-family unit, and you can split it into duplexes, equal size. JADU and ADU have size limitations. They can't be equal size. SB 9 allows the 2 units to be equal sized. Again, we have an ordinance that regulates that, Chapter 1784, under rules and regulations, size, height, setbacks, et cetera.
Have we had applications for those?
We have had no applications for SB 9, either urban lot splits or 2-unit pairs. We have had inquiries, but nobody's graduated to application. I'm going to look to Mr. Klein to confirm.
No applications have been submitted.
And that tracks my experience in my other cities that I represent. A handful of inquiries, but everybody who's asked about it has said, you know what, I'm just going to do an ADU instead. It's easier. And part of why that's happening is that the vision that the legislatures seem to have is that if you have a small house on an irregularly shaped lot, You split off the back and sell it separately, and now the senior can stay in her home and sell off the back. The problem is if she's got a loan, the bank won't approve the split. So they're running into the bank approval situation for people who have a loan and don't own the property outright. As the demographics and transitions change, we may see more of those coming to the pike, but that's what stopped in many of the inquiries that have come in, is when they realize they have to go to their bank, and the banks have no clue. And they're like, nope, you want to take my collateral and cut it in half? No, I refuse.
Right.
Even though, depending on the situation, the house is the value, not necessarily the land, but if the house is small enough, the value is the land, not the house. So they're unwilling to cut the collateral. And then, let's see, SB 9, SB 35, that one we have a slide for. Next slide. So SB 35 protects certain projects that are, there we go. Multifamily housing development projects, it has to include a certain amount of affordable. Again, there's a percentage-based metric, X affordable, very low, X affordable, low, a little less moderate, a little more moderate, a little less, very low. It has to be consistent with objective development standards, as discussed. It here has to be prevailing wage project and a skilled and trained workforce. It has to be an urban area, urban site, infill site. We are a city that's subject to SB 35. Most cities in SoCal are. You cannot demolish existing low-income occupied or low-income housing. No subdivisions. 75% adjoining urban uses, and not be in a prohibited environment, which does not pick up fire safe, but does pick up wetlands or the middle of a Native American burial ground, things like that. We've had inquiries on SB 35 projects. I don't think we've yet had an application because nobody's willing to pay prevailing wages and a skilled and trained workforce, at least here. However, there are lots of places that have had full SB 35 applications go through where the values can support the higher wage costs.
We've also heard from developers that the delta between prevailing wage projects and just market rate projects is not that much anymore. It used to be about a 20 to 30% difference between what most developers will be able to pay for a project and what they would have to pay under prevailing wage, but now we're hearing that it's getting very close.
There's a shortage of labor, I think.
Yeah, so they're paying already a fairly high rate, very close to prevailing wage.
The prevailing wage law increased our food pantry project by approximately 15% recently.
Okay.
And avoiding that increase in price is what's driving some developers to not use SB 35. The benefits to a developer are it is CEQA exempt, it's a streamlined process, and they get to adjust development standards akin to density bonus law. So let's see, that takes us to, next slide. This one is another new one that may not occur here, but it's worth just being aware of. This is AB 1490, which allows extremely affordable adaptive reuse projects. This is what was be done in some cases under Project Home Key grants. It's conversion of existing residential commercial buildings that already are structured to allow temporary occupancy, a motel, to be converted into housing. If it's 100% affordable, and of that 100%, half very low income affordable. So this is a derelict motel being converted into housing, or a nice motel that someone can afford to buy being converted into housing. It may not occur here given that we have only a few hotels and none of them, they're all doing well, but it's worth being aware of. And there's very few restrictions on a project that comes in under that set of requirements. It's essentially what's on the ground can be converted. You can't force them to match a zoning code when the building doesn't match it. Next one is SB 4. This is the Yes in God's Backyard bill. And it allows housing development projects as a use by right, regardless of whatever the zoning or general plan says, for land owned by independent religious institutions or independent higher education institutions, if nonprofit. If all units are for lower income households and it meets certain density standards, residential zones, 20 units an acre, and 1 story taller than whatever the zoning code standard is. In non-residential zones, 40 units an acre and 1 story taller than whatever the height limit is. We may or may not see, nobody's inquired about using this going forward. We have 1 or 2 sites that there's enough land owned by a qualifying institution that they might be interested in it, and if so, we'll keep you posted.
We have one site in our housing element, actually,
I was, yeah, that too.
the church along Lost Virgins Road.
Oh.
And then let's see, I think there was, one more. The next one is SB 684. And this one allows for, oh, did I mix up my ones before? I did AB 1803. No, I covered this one before. I mixed up my numbers. AB 803 is SB 684. The medium density housing one. This is the one I was mentioning before. The 10 units or less, 600 square foot parcels, 1750 square foot units. And here we can, has to be multifamily zoned and is otherwise small scale home developments. And the focus here is the legislature keeps looking for sort of anything and everything to create and promote what the legislature thinks will create is more housing. And there's sort of, and this is a summary of, there's 25 bills that were passed this year. We're working on memos that cover all of them. Stay tuned on that front. They are continuing to try to solve what they view as the housing crisis by eroding local control instead of paying for building affordable housing. And with that, the last slide is the chart. This is more of a take-home than a go through every line right now. But it demonstrates that the old days of reviewing a project and seeing, oh, does it meet setback and zoning and height limits, and that's enough. Nowadays, you need to understand, is there an affordability component? What number of units is there? What's the zoning situation? And then that tells you which of a dozen laws will govern the application.
And also this is a handy sheet. Just to go through it quickly, you look at the number of units, look at the zones, how it's zoned, affordability level, type of development, the density bonus eligibility, statute, hearing permissible, and the level of review. If you notice, the 2 acts are not here because those are just restrictions on development. Here, this deals with what must be developed. Let's go back. So if we look here, the development project, residential development application, but basically the development project is the nomenclature. If you have 1 unit, single family zoned, market rate development, that goes for single family home, 80 ADU, is that a, oh, it's very small. ADU, and then SB 9, single family home. Look at this, single family home, density bonus, no. Municipal codes, is the statute. Hearing permissible, yes. Level of review. So this just is an overview of how to see a big picture, an overview. So it's a handy sheet.
Okay.
All right, and that concludes our housing law presentation.
Well, thank you, Venitra and Matt, and for your input, Michael and Tom. Lots of information, lots to chew on. And we obviously can talk about the issues raised by all of this for days, if not weeks. And this was an informational session, but do any of the commissioners have questions?
Can I ask a question of Matt and
Of course.
staff about where does SCAGs or the Councils of Government RENA process fit in this equation, if at all?
It does. It's part of setting the table. So the heart of these laws could be summarized as cities will be held to their zoning and general plan density standards and cannot negotiate against them or use them as opening offers, not hard requirements. Those standards are set through the RENA process. So in the old days, and the old days here is before about 2017, our general plan and zoning standards were opening offers. You were never guaranteed to build at the full base density. Now, it's very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to force a developer below base density, and in fact, they're often going to go well above through density bonus. And the base density is required through the RENA process to accommodate our share, as dictated by the state, of the regional housing need. So that's how the RENA process comes in. It's part of setting the table as to how much housing we have to zone for, to the extent that we're subject to RENA.
This is a hypothetical, but we have I believe, about a 353 RENA requirement in this current cycle, of which, from my calculations, about 200 of which have to be in the affordable or workforce or whatever low-income, entitlements of the customer,
Right.
The resident would be. What would happen if we got into the business of doing housing like we did at Canyon Creek? Not an existing project. It's not something that's verboten to talk about tonight.
Right, no, that would.
That's 75 units on 1 acre.
Yep.
In Old Town, historic district, special treatment, special plan, everything. But if we decided, instead of having to fight all of this, we say the city is going to encourage as well as participate in developing 200 units of low-income housing, manufactured housing on sites that are convenient to transportation and work sites. Does that get us to our obligations and improve our ability to manage the processes in the city of Calabasas by doing so?
Yes, it would improve our ability to retain local control. It doesn't entirely eliminate the function of these laws.
Yeah, we're not going to change the laws, but
Right, but most of the laws.
we can dodge the bullet.
Right, most of them have this this threshold standard. Have you built your RENA? Rarely is the answer yes. We've always zoned for RENA. We have a compliant housing element. We have since last year. We have zoned for RENA. We are not yet built for RENA, although we're working on it. If we get to the point where we have built for RENA, or when we get there, we will be able to make that finding and thus knock out a portion of these laws, but not all of them. In particular, the challenge will be the no net loss law in reducing, say we were going to downzone capacity. And if we weren't looking at downzoning, and we were just looking at right-sizing individual developments, then we would be in a better position to do so. It just have to be analyzed. Better but not absolute, I guess, is the line. And we'd have to look at it very precisely on any particular application.
Well, and that's going to be up to the people, the council, the staff, and maybe us, if we're not made obsolete by your chart before the horse that I'm calling it here on the back page of this presentation,
Right.
which is really very, very helpful. Thank you. It reduces all the things that you all said and that we've commented upon tonight. And I would recommend to us, although there are other pressing questions, we should probably ask them, but I think we should study this and come back and have a response session of the planning commissioners who are appointed by the elected officials of our city, and gives us time to talk to our council members in addition, in order to determine what we can develop in terms of strategy.
That would make sense to me. I defer to Mr. Klein on timing and the chair and the commission, but yeah, a workshop on housing, something like that would make sense.
It's an excellent idea.
And I want to give credit to Alec Giragosian for that chart.
I'm sorry, say again?
I wanted to give credit to my colleague, Alec Giragosian, for that chart.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah,
Alec?
he's great.
Is he in your
Well, we
firm?
work together. He's with that firm.
Oh, is he here?
You should.
No, he's not here, but we'll pass it on.
You should copyright the chart before the horse.
Yeah.
Yes,
Has to
serious,
give
you
credit to
should.
the intellectual property.
yeah, there is, down
I-
at the bottom is a little tiny C. And yeah, no, Alex, he is city attorney for Sierra Madre, and he's at their meeting tonight.
I do like the idea of
if
the
we come
workshops.
back with a workshop, I would add that one thing that I would want, that the department would want clarity on, something that we can then refer to the council for their consideration, is looking at our housing programs and prioritizing some of those requirements. So for example, we brought up the pre-approved ADUs, the objective development standards. Those all will cost money. So rough estimates, pre-approved ADU plans probably will cost around $150,000 for the city to hire a firm and go through that process. Objective development standards, probably in the ballpark of $400,000 to $500,000.
Can't we just adopt Agura's on an interim basis and then later do our own? Because why do we have to spend that kind of time and money when
Agora
it's
is
already
very
there?
specific to their community
Oh,
and
I
their
see,
zoning.
so each area is,
Yeah.
oh, got it, okay.
So from there, and then we've also talked about previously adaptive reuse as a possible tool for housing. So I would like to add, if we have that workshop, I would like to add that discussion so that the commission can forward a recommendation to council on priority of moving forward with those different programs.
But I think we should have members of the public as well, so.
Oh,
because
yeah,
they-
yeah, the public will be present,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
I don't think anybody in the public realized the import of the work that we asked for and that you did, all of you. There's nobody here tonight. Hopefully, there's a few folks watching, but they can communicate with staff and with us, and should, so that we can have whatever we call the next session. Frankly, it ought to just be not the February 15th commission meeting, but perhaps the first commission meeting in March, because this is immediate. This is upon us. And the election is coming up, and if you want to affect the outcome of some of the legislators who are making their careers on this kind of, pogrom, it would be nice to be able to say, let's go talk to those guys.
Well, but the question is, how quickly can staff put this together? We can't say, I don't want to say, come back
Oh,
in 2 weeks.
I don't
or
think it needs to be
if-
complete.
if-
We're just
If
continuing
they're
the
not
conversation.
prepared to,
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah, let us noodle on the timing. We'll put our thinking caps on that. Give us some flexibility on that front.
And it could be phased, March we do something, and then in April and May and June, at least before we run out of this year's budget, we at least have a chance to engage our council members and our opinion leaders in the community and start dealing with some of this stuff, because nobody knows the chart before the horse.
No, and
This
we're
is
gonna,
tonight. Thank you very much.
we'll end up with more surprise developments like the ones around here, so it's better to do these workshops, but as you can, I agree.
all right.
And
Well,
if I could
thank
make one final comment, I did clarify the point I was a little flubby on earlier. So SB 684 is 10 or fewer units multifamily. AB 803, 10 or fewer units single family. Similar lot size standards. They're basically small apartments or small condos or small single family. But both protect 10 or fewer on 5-acre or less sites.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right,
Got anything to say?
we're ready to,
Can we take a 5-minute break, please?
well,
Well,
I think we're done.
I'm going to move to adjourn,
Yeah.
Well, hang on.
but I won't
We need the
until you tell me.
director's report real quick,
Okay.
and then we will be adjourning.
Really quickly, we don't have anything coming up for the next planning commission meeting, so we'll go ahead and cancel the February, I think it was February 15th.
It is.
That'll be canceled. I do want to mention that earlier this week, I attended a Valley Economic Alliance Sustainability Think Tank, and Commissioner Washburn was present. That was a very interesting think tank. One thing that big takeaway that I got from that, which I appreciated, is we had a discussion on water, and the gentleman that gave this presentation said that the number one source of water or increase in source of water for the LA region has been conservation. So he pointed that out as a really important mechanism of us being able to manage our water supply. He said that between 1960 and roughly 1980, the average water use was about 180 gallons per day per person. And we have now in LA region have reduced that to about 80 to 100 gallons per day per person. So that has been our greatest resource of water in the LA County region.
And we've had a doubling of the population, too.
Right, doubling of population and almost no increase in water consumption.
Right.
All right, thank you. Any reports from any commissioners? No?
No, I just
Nope.
love that housing presentation.
Yep.
Thank you very
Yeah, it
much.
was excellent.
I really do
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I would
I've been
just-
asking for stuff for a long time, and that's
I would just
overwhelming.
Welcome.
encourage everybody to take a look at the X Prize site. because yesterday on the news, the X Prize for wildfire, which is about 11 million bucks, has been essentially incorporated in the various fire departments' plans and water agency plans as well. But the X Prize for removing carbon from the atmosphere and the ocean and the ground and everything else, that's 100 million bucks, and that deadline to file was today. And there's a new X Prize for longevity, hoping to extend the lives of those present and everybody else as well, with all the bioscience and biotech, as well as medical and healthcare issues that we're improving moment to moment. So take a look at that, because it's outside of the legislature, outside of the governor, outside of all the elected officials in a sense, and it gives an alternative to being creative. I would just encourage us all to take a look and do something about it.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that.
Second.
I'm sure all are in favor?
In
Yes?
favor, yes.
All right,
Thank
we
you.
are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank